This podcast is intended for mature audiences and could be triggering to some. Please use discretion when listening. On a personal note, sadly, this past Saturday, my father-in-law, Papa, passed away suddenly. He was the only real dad I've ever had, and his impact, both on myself and those who I love dearly, will go on forever. My father-in-law was a dog trainer, and yesterday my favorite dog of his, Maya, passed away and went to go be with Papa. I want to dedicate this episode to both of them. They always made me feel loved, safe, and cared for. Thank you. In an article written by John Snook, executive director of the Treatment Advocacy Center, that he wrote for Variety and Rolling Stone for a special series entitled American Injustice, which is linked in the show notes, of course, he writes, an estimated 8.3 million adults in the United States have a severe mental illness. At any given time, 3.9 million go untreated. With medication and other support services, those with severe mental illness are no more dangerous than anyone else, capable of leading happy and productive lives. Without treatment, their prospects worsen. Yet the odds are stacked against these individuals. Our healthcare system actively denies them care, and we criminalize the symptoms of their diseases. When someone has a heart attack, an ambulance takes them to an emergency room. When someone is in the depths of psychosis, however, police are called and frequently cart that person off to jail. Without treatment, those with severe mental illness experience a host of negative consequences. Many take their own lives. Others face a shortened lifespan due to much increased risk of other chronic health conditions. Ultimately, those with severe mental illness die, on average, 25 years earlier than their peers. Others are lost to the streets. Conservative estimates suggest that 1/4 of the homeless population suffers from a severe mental illness. In 2017, that amounted to 138,435 individuals on a single night. Although common are arrests for so-called quality-of-life crimes like loitering and public urination, behaviors that are triggered by illness, not criminal intent. As a result, incarceration has become the norm for those with severe mental illness. 40% of them are incarcerated at some point in their lives. 2 million are booked into jails each year. The Treatment Advocacy Center estimates that 383,000 individuals with severe mental illnesses were incarcerated in 2016, although many belonged in hospitals instead. But jails are the worst place to provide mental health treatment. Would-be patients are isolated. They deteriorate, are victimized, and receive inadequate care. Their symptoms result in additional offenses and time behind bars. A 2018 national investigation revealed that since 2010, more than 400 people with mental illness have died in our nation's jails. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, mental illnesses are common in the United States, affecting tens of millions of people each year. Estimates suggest that only half of the people with mental illness receive treatment. Nearly 1 in 5 U.S. adults live with a mental illness, 46.6 million in 2017. I'm Tiffany Reese, and this is Something Was Wrong.
You think you know me, you don't know me well at all. Think you know me, you don't know me well.
Mental health is it's such a problem in the United States right now. People can't get help. And that I remember when she was really sick and saying that she didn't want to live anymore. And I tried to call around to get her counseling, and you can't. I couldn't find anywhere that would talk to her or take her. And I've experienced that problem too with this exact thing, because when I found out that she did not have cancer, I reached out to my health insurance and I said, hey, I'd like to get an appointment with a counselor. And I had seen a counselor previously dealing with, my friend is dying thing. So I made a phone call and they said, oh, well, he doesn't have any appointments for 6 weeks. And I said, lady, I just found out my best friend has been faking cancer for 4 years and that she has factitious disorder. And I'm crying and they're like, well, we don't have any appointments. I was furious, and I'm sure I yelled and said some very nice things. And then I sat down and I wrote a letter to my doctor, and I said, I just want you to know what's going on. This is what happened. Sylvia does not have cancer. She has been cutting herself open, sewing herself back up. She never had cancer, and we just found out. And I tried to call to get an appointment to come talk to you, and I can't. And I don't know what to do. I'm terribly upset. And I just thought you should know. I thought you should know that I can't get in to see you because your office won't let me. And they won't even get a message to you to tell you that there is a problem and a crisis. And I just thought you should know that. And I sealed it and I put private and personal on it. I addressed it to his office with attention to him. And 4 days later, he got his mail and he opened it and he called me right away and he got me in within 24 hours. She did not feel good, and she was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And although she really never had cancer, you have to keep in mind that she was making herself extremely ill. She was sick. She was physically sick and mentally sick. She was taking medication to make herself sick. So although she didn't have what we thought, she still was extremely ill and she looked terrible. And so when you would come over and see this person and she, I don't feel like I can go on anymore. I don't feel like I can live anymore, which is totally normal for someone who has cancer and who has no hair and who is vomiting and diarrhea, 24/7, is dehydrated and can't hardly walk and can't get out of bed and can't take care of their children. That is mentally taxing. And I remember sitting there and pulling out our healthcare card. And I remember even calling the different places that are in town that have inpatient. They were all full. That was the problem. It wasn't that they wouldn't, her insurance wouldn't be taken. They're all full. And what you might not know is even if you go to the emergency room and say you want to harm yourself and you want to be 5150, all that does is they now, and this has been in the last few years, is all they do is they find a place, a facility that has an empty bed, and they put you on a 72-hour hold, and they basically put you in a room with things that you cannot harm yourself with. So you cannot have shoestrings, you cannot have, all these different things. But you don't get any counseling in those 72 hours. It's not like you get 5150 and they take you to a place that has a bed for you and you're going to get help within those 72 hours. No, they just keep you safe for 72 hours and then they set you up with counseling or a program or an outpatient or an inpatient program. But you don't get to talk to somebody, which is the misconception. I would think if I thought I was losing my mind and drove to the emergency room and asked to be 5150, I would think I would get to talk to a counselor. That is not the case. The whole healthcare system with mental health is so completely broken. And let's face it, when you're having a crisis and you're a person that is having an issue and a trauma, you wait to call for help until you can't take it anymore, till you can't deal with it anymore, till you feel broken and that you're going to snap in half and break. And then it takes 6 weeks to get in to see somebody. And that is the standard of care. Yeah, my doctor got my letter. How many people do you know that think to write their doctor a personal letter, mark it private, personal, and then have their doctor call them? That was a random thought that happened to me that worked, thank goodness. And it was so helpful to get to talk to him because he is the one that told me you cannot rationalize irrational behavior. So in your rational head right now, you are trying to find rational answers as to what happened and why it happened. There are no rational answers because she is unrational. Her behavior is unrational. It's not normal thinking. So normal people are not going to understand that. So you need to give yourself a break, take a breath, and know that you're not going to figure this out. And that was so helpful. One day, 1 hour of counseling after the initial trauma was invaluable to me. And to know that it's so hard to get and it shouldn't be. I went to her house and she was so sick and so like the under her eyes was like so dark and she could barely walk. And I took her to the emergency room, and she told them, I was there in the emergency room in the bay with her, and she told the nurse, I have cancer, I have ovarian cancer. I'm in chemo, I am taking, these meds, and she rattled off meds. They refused to treat her. And I remember being so confused. Why are they not going to give her any medication, any pain medication, anything? And I believe they said, we can give you fluids, but that's it. You'll have to follow up with your regular doctor. Well, they had to have had, because that's where she went a lot of times, they had to have her medical record. They had to know that she did not have cancer. But I didn't know that. So in my view, I said, well, maybe they think you're, a drug seeker. And so they're not going to give you any meds because, you need to follow up with your cancer doctor tomorrow. But you should at least get fluids. And she literally, no, I want out of here. And I remember her peeling the leads that are taped on you off. And she was like, no, we're going to get out of here. And I was like, no, you need medical help. And I feel so embarrassed now because I know now. And when I was helping her out and she couldn't even hardly walk and her arm was around my neck and I'm dragging my dying friend out of the emergency room and we're passing by the nurses and the doctor's station, I looked at them and I go, you should be absolutely ashamed of yourself. You should just be ashamed. You are not helping someone who is dying of cancer. You're not giving her medical attention. You should be ashamed of yourself. This could be your mother, your daughter, whatever. You should be ashamed. Now I know. They knew, but I didn't know. And then I took her home, and then she told me that later that her husband took her to a different hospital and she got help with that. She had a seizure while waiting for treatment and that her heart actually stopped during this time where she was waiting. Her husband took her to a different hospital where she could get care, and that during that process that her heart stopped beating, and how, horrible the other hospital was for not helping her and how she almost died from it, and that her heart stopped, and it was this huge thing. And I was so mad, at that other place, like, look at what they did, and, and things like this happened. But at the time I thought it was, I'm mad at the doctors at that hospital, but the reality is that they had to have known. But then why, when you know something like that's going on, is there no reporting of that? Is there no follow-up on that? Or I guess if there was, I wouldn't know, because she certainly wouldn't have told us.
There was no electronic medical records at that time, or very, very limited. So, but even if they did know, like you said, they couldn't say anything because of HIPAA laws. They would be breaking a law because that's her personal medical information. You're not a family member. You're not her sole care provider. And so, there are laws in place that protect that. And unfortunately, I think this is one of the few times where that sort of sucks, and it could cost them their job. So I've been reading the DSM and trying to understand more about, the different categories of mental disorders and personality disorders and all sorts of things to help me better understand this story. And one of the things that I am having, I guess, trouble with understanding, and I don't know that I'll ever find the answer to it necessarily, is that she had these obvious symptoms of factitious disorder and making herself sick. She did also have a lot of malingering behaviors that often looks to secondary gains aside just making yourself feel with factitious disorder, you're feeling ill and that's a conscious process, but your gain is really medical attention and the sort of sympathy of others. However, a lot of times it sounds like she wasn't even actually getting the medical attention. She was doing it herself.
So I struggle with doing the research on what exactly is this? What are the gains? Was she a sociopath? Did she feel guilt? Was she a narcissist? She was brilliant, which psychopaths and narcissists are usually pretty gosh darn smart. What was she? Like, what mental ailment did she have? So I'm with you. I researched, and I'm still so confused on what exactly she had, because we don't really know where the truth lies. She also received lots of secondary gains. In my eyes, they were not huge. She did not get a house. But I mean, she got like care packages and meals, and I'm sure people gave her stuff all the time because she was bald and sick. And did she feel guilty for that? Did she feel guilty after she was found out? She never wrote me a letter explaining, except for that very first day that said, I've come to find out I don't have cancer, and that I have factitious disorder, and that I never had cancer. And I want you to know I did believe I was getting all those surgeries. But I never saw any remorse from her. She just showed a little bit of remorse, with the doctor, with the letter she sent him. There seemed to be some kind of remorse there. But again, it's that hypersexuality, and that men were always in the forefront for her. Like, she always put men first. Her husbands, her boyfriends, they all went ahead of her children and her friends and her family. So that, I think, is part of her mental illness. But I'm with you. I don't know what exactly and she could have multiple things. Let's face it, she had to have had multiple things, but trying to understand them, it's easier if it was just Munchausen and she's hurting herself for the attention. But it really wasn't just that. And it really wasn't just the factitious disorder.
I think that we need to hold people accountable that do this, not vendatively or viciously, but when you know something like this has happened, and through my own listening to the news and research, I find that it happens with nurses sometimes on my research. It seems like I've heard a lot of stories. I don't believe these people should be able to be practicing medicine, and I think that we have to hold people accountable for their actions that do this. How is that? What does that look like? I guess it would depend on the person and the situation, but I feel like you can't have these people taking care of other people and doing things with other people, and absolute mind control and manipulation that happens to make these things happen. And I think that, there has to be something we can do. I felt like, gosh, I was really trying to, with the nursing board and stuff, and I called social services for the children, and they did not care. Social services did not care at all. And I'm like, do you understand what I'm telling you? That she told her children she was dying for 4 years, and she cut herself open and sewed herself back up, and she has her children. Like, how can you guys not? They did nothing.
Because they didn't have proof?
No, they didn't even investigate.
They didn't even investigate.
No, they didn't do nothing. So the system's broken there.
It just consumed all of my thoughts and energy, just trying to understand, how someone could do this to other people. And then, eventually you just realize, I'm never going to understand. There's not one person that exists that knows all of the truth except for Sylvia. I mean, thinking about it, so much over the years, I just had to learn that I can't take it personally, what happened to me. She was mentally ill, and it had nothing, really to do with me, all these lies and stuff, and that I couldn't take it as a personal attack on me, what happened, and just know that she was sick, and it's something that happened, and I just had to move on.
How has this experience changed you?
I definitely don't let people in as much, which I think is good. I still probably try to take care of people a little too much, but that's my nature. That's who I am. So that's just the way it is. But I think that I learned a big lesson, and I learned not to put anybody ahead of my own family. And I learned that people lie, and that even the sweetest person that you think the sweetest person on the planet, they can lie and deceive and steal and rob and cheat. And, that's the thing. She was the sweetest young woman and beautiful and nice and kind. She was never mean to me. She never had a mean word to say. How you sometimes bicker with friends. Never a mean word to me. Nothing. I had no clue. I had no idea this was going on. I had no signs this was going on. Nobody did.
I was thinking about some of the other aspects of this and the fallout of after we found out about Sylvia, and telling people and explaining to people what happened, and the guilt I felt for dragging my coworkers into this and dragging my family into this and my friends into this. I know it wasn't my fault that this happened and that my friend had, factitious disorder and Munchausen, and I know that isn't my fault. I do know that on a level, but I really pulled in my coworkers to help. So I led the troops. I was, come on, you guys, everybody get on the meal train. Come on, you guys, let's help her move. Because I believe in the, it takes a village mentality, and it takes a village to raise our children and a community. And if someone's painting their house, you go and you help them because you are hopeful that someone will come and help you. So that's just always been my way of things. And I really did suck the people into helping. And my family, I sacrificed my own family, and I, had them helping me buy things, do things, helping, going over there. And the guilt I felt that I did all that, and then I sucked all those people in. And, I did have the thought, why didn't I see this? Why didn't I know? How could I not know that these things were not real? How did I not see this for 4 years? And then I also, at the exact same moment, had solace knowing that she went to a counselor and that the counselor didn't see it. And that is their job. So that was helpful that I had that person, that I knew that they believed her too, and that we all believed her. Everybody believed her. Nobody doubted her, but I still had really bad guilt. The damage I did to my child by dragging my child through that 4 years with me, sick in it, and I made her help me. No, you're going to help me do these dishes, do this, run this vacuum, or no, now you have to help me at home because we were over there, so we have to, and my sweet child has such a huge heart, and she loved Sylvia. She loved those children, and I put my daughter in that situation.
My mom's my best friend, so it's just hard to see someone you love go through such heartbreak and loss. Because if you think about it, even though she didn't necessarily pass away with us, that's what happened though. She was no longer in our life abruptly. Right. We had to grieve it on our own.
Yeah.
When things get so dark and twisty with the whole situation that happened, it's was there a funeral? And then you're second guessing everything in your head. And so it's if I was there, maybe in my head I could process it more as, okay, yeah, this is validated, I have some closure now. Now I know this has happened, so now I can move on and grieve. I felt like I was really close with them. I wish at least the kids could have kept in contact. Not only just with me, but again with everybody from the hospital, all of us kids, we were there together. We did Easters together. We did events at the hospital together. And it's almost okay, well, this is also an abrupt loss for you. So not only have you lost one person, you've lost the entire family. Me and my mom are both empaths, so we feel what other people feel. And somebody I love is so sick. There's nothing I can do to fix that, though, or really to help. The diagnosis that she said was bad. So it's I have nothing I can do to help, but, almost take the pain you're feeling and then put it on myself. And like, it's hard for us too. On top of this, we have autoimmune diseases. So like, it makes us more tired. We have way more chronic fatigue. I feel like our moods are more elevated. It's a traumatic experience at the end of the day afterwards. And that's hard.
The horrible grief when I found out my friend was, had cancer and was dying. And then I had horrible grief, when I found out that she wasn't dying and that she was mentally ill. That was a whole death in itself to me. That was the death of my friendship, and I never saw her again. And then I had the whole grief thing again when she did die, and there's never going to be answers. And so that was I had 3 different sessions of grief to go through, and they were all horrible and they were all traumatic, and it was the same person in 3 grief cycles.
What made you want to tell your story?
I always wanted to be able to tell it in my own voice, and I didn't want somebody else changing my words or my feelings by editing. And so I think it was too soon before now because I wasn't in a good place with it. And that would be something I would want to share, that like, I am in a good place now and I am okay with it now. It was a terrible thing that happened to me, and sometimes it feels unbelievable, but I am over it. I did learn from it and I have moved on from it. And that people that are in the thick of that, when that happens to you, you can recover, you can move on. It's a lesson, There are some people out there that will do and say anything. And, I feel really sorry for her ex-husband. And I feel sorry that I doubted him and thought he was a douchebag. I'm not sure he was a douchebag. He may have been, but I don't think so. I think that we were all told things to keep us in our box.
It's hard to summarize how I feel about this story. At first, it was so easy for me to hate Sylvia, especially after hearing the things she had done to her children. Over time and through deeper understanding, I began to feel complete pity for her simultaneously. If you are mentally ill enough to be cutting and sewing yourself up while emotionally abusing your children, you're probably either evil or psychologically unwell. And yet, as much as I empathize and sympathize that Sylvia was mentally unwell, I still feel utter heartbreak and anger for her children. To hear her daughter on that video talk show clip was unreal levels of sadness. And then there's T and her family and all of their own heartache and trauma. I've only known her for a few months, but I can tell you that she's an incredible person. Just yesterday, I had to put our family dog down, Maya, only a few days after my father-in-law, Papa, just died, and she helped me find an organization that would come put Maya down in a peaceful way. A few months ago, she offered to help when we had another personal family issue to deal with, and she completely saved us. She's just one of those weird freak of nature humans that give a genuine fuck about other people. So much so that despite herself being sick with multiple autoimmune diseases, she took care of her sick coworker and friend for years out of the goodness of her heart. And even after this took place, she went back to school to better understand psychology and mental health. She's gone to therapy and chooses now to use her story to help other people. And though I am devastated that any of this actually took place in real life, and that T went through this trauma, and that Sylvia's kids went through this trauma, and that Sylvia went through this trauma, and everybody else who was affected in the wake of this horrible thing, I'm so thankful that I got to tell this story, and I'm very thankful that I got to know T. And like life, there are so many unknowns that will forever go unanswered. Was Sylvia a lying sociopath or a mentally unwell person with fictitious disorder abusing medications? Is she both? Can you be both? No, seriously, I'm asking. I don't know. Can you let me know? Sadly, I desire to believe that Sylvia passed away due to years of abuse she put her body through, instead of the thought that she killed herself and let her young daughter be the one to find her dead body. We will never know. A lot of people loved Sylvia, and simultaneously, she left a massive amount of emotional damage and destruction for those that loved her. There are some answers we simply cannot find, and I'm working on figuring out how to accept these kinds of unknowns. Learning to accept what cannot be changed, and it fucking blows.
You think you know me, you don't know me well at all. think you know me, you don't know me well.
Thank you to T, Kurt, Sarah, and Jen for participating in this series. T and I will be recording a Q&A episode soon. If you have a question, you can send it via email, Instagram, or by calling or texting 1-323-379-5678. Thank you so much. Something Was Wrong is written, recorded, edited, and produced by me, Tiffany Reese. All of the music by Glad Rags. Hear their album Wonder Under on iTunes. Follow the hashtag Something Was Wrong Pod on Instagram. You can now purchase Something Was Wrong merch at sww.threadless.com. The books referenced on this show can be found linked in the show notes. If you or someone you know is being abused, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. Thank you. If you'd like to help support the show, please consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes and sharing the podcast with your family and friends. And neighbor, and garbage man, and gynecologist, and record producer, and ex-boyfriend. No, don't do that. Yeah, just like everyone you know. That'd be cool. Thank you. Love you. Bye.
Think you know me, you don't know me well. You think you know me, you don't know me
Healthy hearts love longer. They let you be there for all of life's most precious moments, big and small. That's why the specialists at Dignity Health Heart and Vascular Institute of Greater Sacramento never miss a beat. We perform the most cardiovascular procedures in Northern California. Whatever life brings, our cardiac team is always by your side to guide you through it. We're here to keep your heart in top shape for whatever greatness comes next. Take a free heart risk assessment at dignityhealth.org/heartandvascular. Dignity Health. Hello, human kindness.